This is Patrick Dawson on 102.7 FM, or whatever is left of it. The signal meter is barely moving. The static keeps sliding across the board like dust on glass, and the backup battery under the desk is humming louder than the wind outside. It's 4:16 in the morning here in Columbus, Ohio, though the sky hasn't shown its real color in days. Everything past the broken blinds is a smear of dark gray, the kind that presses against the windows like someone standing too close, breathing cold air into the seams. I don't know how long this small emergency generator will keep the station alive. It runs hot, and I can already smell the metal getting warm. But if this thing dies, then my voice dies with it. And if my voice dies, then so does whatever thread is still connecting the people who are left. So I'll stay here, talking, keeping this old station alive with nothing but stubborn fear and whatever hope I haven't burned through yet. I haven't slept in 2 nights. Not real sleep. Just those short drops into darkness, where you don't dream, you just fall. And when you wake up, your heart is already racing because your body doesn't trust the world enough to rest anymore. The temperature inside the building is dropping. I'm wearing my old jacket, the one with the ripped inner lining and the stains from coffee spills that happened back when life was normal, when spilled coffee was the worst part of my morning. There's no heating now. The city grid shut down 3 days ago, and the backup failed everywhere except here. At least, I think it failed everywhere. I haven't heard a clear broadcast from any neighboring station since last night, and that one only lasted a minute before it cut out mid-sentence. No one signs off anymore. They just vanish. Like the lights. Like the phones. Like the people. I keep thinking back to the start of all this. The first strange thing that happened. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It started so quietly that most of us ignored it. People noticed their phones lagging, then freezing, then turning black. Not out of battery, just off, dead. Like something reached through the signal towers and drained them all at once. Some folks joked about solar flares, or some hacker group, or the government running secret tests. Nobody panicked. Not yet. But that was the first clue, the first sign that something was wrong. That morning, I sat right here in this studio, with the lights bright and my coffee hot, and I told people it was probably just a network outage. I said it with that confident tone I used to practice in college, the kind of voice that makes people calm, because it sounds like it knows things. I didn't know anything. And if I'm being honest, I still don't. Every hour feels like guesswork now. But I remember the exact moment the world tipped. The exact second everything stopped pretending to be normal. It was around 2:40 in the afternoon. I was walking back to the studio after grabbing food from the diner across the street. There was a wind blowing, heavy with that warm dust smell that comes after pavement heats up too fast. I heard a sound that I didn't understand at first. Not an explosion, more like a giant electrical sigh. A low hum, deep enough that I felt it in my ribs instead of my ears. Car alarms didn't go off, power lines didn't snap, but everything that used electricity simply stopped. Cars rolled to a halt in the middle of Main Street. Every screen in every building flickered once, twice, and then showed nothing at all. Just darkness. The walk signals froze mid-flash. Even the traffic lights lost their last bit of color. A city that should have been alive with movement suddenly became a picture, a still frame of confusion. I watched a man step out of his truck, leaving the door wide open, his face twisted with shock as he stared at the useless key in his hand. People tried to restart engines, hitting their steering wheels like it would help. But nothing helped. And then came the smell of burning plastic. Thousands of little circuits dying at the same time. That's when the screaming started. Not all at once. First one person, then another, then more, like panic was jumping from mind to mind. I tried calling the station. My phone was just a dead piece of glass. A woman nearby tried hers too. Same thing. People began pushing, running, shouting for someone to fix something. I ran back across the street toward the station, weaving between frozen cars and dropped groceries and people who had no idea what was happening yet. When I got inside, the main power was already gone, the studio dark except for the emergency lights. The backup transmitter was still on, barely, like it was trying its best not to die. I went live that day. My hands were shaking so badly that I could hear the mic shaking with them. I kept telling people to stay calm, stay in place, wait for updates. I didn't believe the words I said, but I said them anyway because silence felt worse. Silence felt like giving up. And the thing that scared me the most then wasn't the screens going black or the machines failing. It was the fact that no one official said anything. No emergency announcements. No police updates. No government messages. Nothing. Just a quiet so wide and deep that the whole country must have felt it at the same time. A quiet that meant either nobody knew what was happening, or nobody could speak. Now it's been days, and that quiet has only gotten heavier. People who used to call into this station aren't calling anymore. The main phone line burnt out yesterday in a small pop and a puff of smoke that left the room smelling sharp and metallic. I didn't even flinch. You stop flinching at things after a while. You just take them in, bump them into the growing pile of things that are gone, and move on because there's no time to grieve every broken part of the world. I've been hearing strange reports from the few voices still broadcasting before they fade away. Some say it's not just a power failure. Some say there's something in the air, something that moves like a sickness but isn't one. A strange fog. A mist that rolls in low and clings to the ground. Others talk about people falling unconscious for no reason. About neighborhoods losing whole blocks in a single night. That can't be true, I tell myself. It sounds impossible, but everything sounds impossible until it happens in your own street, and even the impossible feels normal once you've run out of ways to deny it. The truth is, I don't know how much longer the structure of this city can hold. Without power, the water pumps have stopped. Without water, people panic. They fight for bottles, for food, for things they never thought they'd miss. Last night I heard distant shouts echoing up High Street, long after midnight, the kind of shouts that come from hunger or fear or both. Someone smashed one of the front windows of the pharmacy down the block. Glass was everywhere. They didn't even try to hide it. No alarms, no police, just raw survival. And as much as I want to say, don't do that, I know why they did. People don't steal when they think tomorrow will be better. They steal when they think tomorrow won't come at all. I haven't told you yet about the message I got 2 days ago. The last real message from anyone with some kind of authority. It wasn't local. It came through a scrambled frequency from somewhere in Virginia. The voice was weak and breaking apart, but I could still make out pieces of it. Something about a shutdown that wasn't meant to spread this far. Something about an unintended chain reaction. They mentioned a lab. They mentioned a containment failure. And then they mentioned something that chilled me more than anything else. Signal-based transmission. I don't know what that means. I don't know how something could move through signals when we barely have any left. But whatever they were saying, they sounded terrified. They cut out before they could finish. I've been trying to piece things together from the few fragments of information I still have access to. Old notes from people who used to work in research labs nearby. A former electrical engineer who used to call into this station years ago. And my own gut, which has been screaming at me that whatever this is, it didn't come from the sky, or from nature, or from chance. Someone made something. Someone tested something. And someone lost control of it. The air feels thick sometimes, like the world is breathing slower than it should. I step outside only when I need to grab water from the stash I've been keeping in the back room. When I'm out there, standing in the street, I hear sounds I don't recognize. Not voices, not machines. More like humming. Like the world is carrying a low note under everything. A vibration I feel more than hear. Maybe it's in my head. Maybe it's the generator. Or maybe it's part of whatever started all this. I don't want to scare the people who are still out there listening, but pretending everything is fine isn't helping anyone anymore. So I'll tell you the truth as I see it. The world as we knew it is gone. Not collapsing. Gone. What's left is what we build out of the ruins. What's left is us. The ones who somehow keep going when everything around us stops. I want to talk about how people have been surviving here. I've been walking the building each morning to check for cracks, leaks, broken windows, anything that could make life worse. People in the neighborhood have started forming small groups. I saw a couple yesterday pulling an old hand-cranked water pump from their garage. They were wiping dust off it like it was treasure. And I guess it is now. A few kids were carrying boxes of canned food from a broken convenience store, moving quickly, looking over their shoulders like stray dogs. I didn't stop them. Who am I to stop them? They were scared, but they were working together. Even in fear, humans cling to each other. That's something this disaster hasn't taken from us yet. And here inside the station, I've made a routine. Routine is what keeps you sane when time stops making sense. Morning. Check generator. Midday. Broadcast updates. Evening. Try to conserve power. Night. Listen to distant static for any shred of a human voice. Sometimes I hear one. Sometimes I don't. The silence feels heavier each time. What scares me the most is not the dark, or the cold, or the broken city. It's the feeling that something invisible is moving through all of this. Something that doesn't need electricity or machines. Something that spreads by silence, or fear, or contact. I don't know. I just know the air doesn't feel honest anymore. If you're out there listening, I hope you're somewhere safe, or as safe as you can be. I hope you've found people to trust. I hope you've kept whatever food you can find, and water, and warmth. And if you feel alone, you're not. I'm still here. My voice is still here. And I'll keep talking as long as this station holds. There's more I need to tell you. About what happened last night. About the glow on the horizon. About the figure I saw moving through the street when I thought no one was out there anymore. But this part of the story is already running long, and the generator is heating up again. I can feel the warmth under the desk creeping toward my boots. I'm going to slow the output just a little so it doesn't overload. I should tell you what I saw last night, before it slips into that place in my head where fear turns memories into fog. I've been trying to convince myself it was nothing, that I was overtired, or that my eyes played tricks on me because the streetlights are dead and the moon hides behind whatever haze has covered the sky since all this started. but the longer I sit here thinking about it, the more certain I am that what I saw was real. The glow came first, a faint orange smear far off past the river, just above the rooftops. At first, I thought it was a fire, maybe a building catching from some accident or some desperate group burning whatever they could to stay warm. Fires happen every night now. You hear them crack through the quiet like bones snapping. But this glow didn't flicker the way fire does. It stayed steady for a long time, almost too steady, like it wasn't light from flames, but from something humming, something charged. I stood by the front window of the studio, pressing my hand against the cold glass, trying to catch any sound that matched what I was seeing. Nothing. Just the wind brushing dead leaves along the curb. I kept staring at it until my eyes watered. Then the glow started moving, slow at first, sliding across the skyline like someone dragging a lantern behind a row of buildings. I've never seen light move like that. Not in a straight line, not without dimming or shaking. It made my stomach twist because it didn't feel natural. It felt like something watching the city, something scanning. I waited for it to fade or break apart, but it didn't. It just drifted toward the west until it sank behind the warehouses. When it disappeared, the darkness that followed felt even heavier, like the night had swallowed something it didn't want to show me anymore. That's when I saw the figure. I almost missed it, because it moved without sound. No footsteps, no drag, no shuffle. Just a slow glide like it was floating, even though I could see its shape clearly in the dim light. The outline of a person, or something shaped like one. Tall, thin, shoulders a little hunched. I thought for a second maybe it was someone from the neighborhood looking for shelter or scavenging. But no one walks that late anymore, not unless they're desperate or out of their mind. And nobody moves like that. The figure crossed the street without turning its head, without hesitation, without any sign of fear. Most people walk in quick bursts now, eyes darting around, ready to run. This thing, it didn't behave like someone who wanted to survive. It didn't behave like someone who cared if anything was watching it. It passed underneath the streetlight pole, and even though the bulb was dead, I could still see the faintest outline. Its steps didn't match the movement of its body. Too smooth, too even, like every motion was planned by something that didn't understand what real walking looks like. I backed away from the window without realizing I was doing it. My hands were shaking so hard I had to steady myself against the desk. I didn't want it to look toward the station, even though I don't think it could see me. Or maybe it could. The idea that it might turn its head and look straight through the glass made my chest tighten. I waited, barely breathing, watching from the corner of my eye as it drifted past the front of the station and down toward the intersection. I didn't see where it went after that. It just faded into the dark like the glow had. I stayed away from the window for the rest of the night. Maybe it was a person. Maybe fear warped the way I saw it. But deep down, something in me refuses to believe that. It felt wrong. Like that figure didn't belong to the world we had before this collapse. Like it came from whatever caused the shutdown. Maybe it's connected to the strange reports I heard before the other stations went quiet. People talking about those who don't respond, or those who walk even after everything fails. I wanted to dismiss those as rumors, panic talking. But after last night, I'm not dismissing anything anymore. The city feels different today. The silence has a new weight to it, a pressure I can't describe. The sky looks lower somehow, like the clouds are sagging under a burden they can't hold. The air has a strange taste, like metal and dust mixed together. I don't know if it's from fires burning out of sight or something else drifting through the atmosphere. Some of the old engineers who used to call the show would talk about ionization, how certain shifts in the air can make people feel like something is pressing on them. Maybe this is that. Or maybe the world is changing in ways no one predicted. People used to laugh at the idea of society falling apart. They'd say it could never happen here. Not with our technology, not with our military, not with our money. But technology made us fragile. Military strength doesn't matter when the entire system that runs it stops working. And money hasn't meant anything in days. Food matters, water matters, warmth matters. People trade canned soup like it's gold now. A bottle of clean water could get you a jacket or a knife. The world went backwards overnight, but not in a simple way, not a clean return to old times. It's like we've been pushed into a place where nothing makes sense, where the rules change each hour, where no one knows what's safe anymore. I talked to an old man yesterday. I found him sitting outside the abandoned bakery near the corner, wrapped in 3 blankets and staring at the cracked pavement like he was trying to remember something important. His voice was thin when he spoke. He told me he used to work in a lab here in Ohio, something to do with electromagnetic fields and wave patterns. He didn't give details, or maybe he couldn't. But he said something that stuck with me. He said, "We built things that changed the way signals move. We didn't think it would ever leave the testing chambers, but signals travel. They leak, they jump, they find paths we don't see." I asked him what he meant, but he just shook his head and muttered something about silent spread and human thresholds. I didn't understand any of it. Before I could get more out of him, he wandered off into the cold and didn't look back. Maybe he was rambling. Maybe his mind is slipping after days without sleep or food. But his words felt too sharp to ignore, too close to the strange messages that came through the scrambled frequency. Signals moving through air, signals affecting systems, signals affecting people. I hate thinking about it, but I can't stop replaying his voice in my head. This station feels smaller today. The walls seem closer, like the room is shrinking slowly each hour. I keep hearing faint pops in the ceiling, like the building is settling in ways it shouldn't. The generator makes a low grinding noise now when it kicks in. I've tried to fix it, but I'm not a mechanic, and tools don't help when the machine is already failing from inside. If it goes, I go. My words will die mid-sentence. The silence will swallow the last thing connecting me to anyone out there. But for now, it's still giving me enough power to talk. I walked through the hallway earlier, checking the fire escape door to make sure it was still locked. There were scratches on the metal near the handle. Thin ones, not like someone used a tool, more like something dragged across it. I ran my fingers over them, and they felt shallow but fresh. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but paired with what I saw last night, I don't know. I just don't know. It's strange how quickly your mind adapts to danger. A month ago, if I had seen someone moving like that in the street, I would have called the police, locked the doors, maybe even run. Now I just watch. I observe. I accept it as another layer of this new world. Fear is still there, yes, but it sits quietly, like a roommate who never leaves but rarely speaks. It just lingers, waiting. I want to talk about survival for a moment. Real survival. Not the way movies show it with big speeches and dramatic music and people coming together in perfect unity. No. Survival in a city without power or communication is slow, messy, exhausting. It's waking up each day wondering if the water you saved is enough. It's deciding whether to risk going outside for food or stay inside and hope you don't run out. It's every little sound making your heart jump. It's feeling your stomach twist because you haven't eaten enough, but knowing you have to ration what you do have. It's trusting the wrong person and regretting it. It's trusting no one and regretting that too. I've learned small things that help, things I want to share in case anyone out there needs them. If you have canned food, save the liquid inside. It helps with hydration. If you have windows, cover them when the sun rises to hold the warmth inside. Use clothes, blankets, anything. Look for buildings with basements. The temperature stays more stable there. Stay off open streets when you can. Use alleys. Move slow. Listen before stepping out. If you hear humming, don't follow it. If you see lights that don't flicker, stay away. And above all, don't isolate yourself. People are scared, yes, but fear also makes people bond. Look for groups that share, that organize, that rotate watch shifts. Trust carefully, but trust someone. No one survives long alone. Sometimes I think about who might be listening right now. Maybe someone in an apartment with boarded windows. Maybe someone huddled in a car that hasn't moved since the shutdown, using it as shelter. Maybe someone in a basement, tuning this frequency with an old battery-powered radio they dug out of their garage. Maybe a group gathered around a cracked radio, sharing the last working batteries they could find. I hope my voice reaches them. I hope it makes them feel less alone, even for a moment. The sun should be rising soon, though I doubt we'll see it. The haze keeps everything dim. It's been days since I've seen a clear sky. I wonder if the world still has blue above all this, or if that color is gone now, replaced by this sick gray that eats the horizons. The birds stopped singing 2 days ago. Not one chirp, not one flutter. I used to hear them even in winter. Now it's only silence and that low hum that slips through the cracks at night. My hands are cold again. I keep rubbing them together, but the warmth fades too fast. The building has lost most of its insulation from the broken windows and the lack of heating. I found an old space heater in the supply closet, but it's useless without electricity. Everything feels useless when you realize how much of your life depended on invisible systems you never thanked. I'm tired, not just in my body, in my mind. My thoughts feel slower today, like they're moving through thick mud. I catch myself forgetting simple things, words, places, names. I worry sometimes that the silence outside is getting inside me, changing me, making me dull or unfocused. I try to shake it off, but sometimes it feels like something is pressing on my head from the inside. Maybe it's stress, maybe it's lack of sleep, or maybe it's part of whatever is happening to this city. But I can't stop. I won't stop. As long as my voice reaches even one person, I'll keep going. There's something else I need to tell you. Something I found this morning when I went into the back room to check the water supplies. It concerns the station. It concerns what might be happening here. And it scares me in a way nothing else has. When I stepped into the back room this morning, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not a rotten smell, not something dead or spoiled. It was metallic, sharp, almost like the air near old batteries. The kind of smell that makes your tongue feel dry even if your mouth is closed. I hadn't noticed it yesterday, and I've been in and out of that room every day checking the water stash, the food box, the backup cables. Today, it hit me the moment I opened the door, strong enough that I stopped and leaned my forehead against the frame for a second. My head felt light, like the air was thinner in there. I told myself it was probably just the generator fumes drifting through the vents, because everything in this building is old and broken now. But the smell was wrong. It wasn't smoke or gas. It was something colder, like the taste of metal right before a storm. I stepped inside anyway. I had to. I needed the water bottles, and I needed to check the fuel I saved for the generator. I moved slow, listening to the way the floor creaked under my boots. The room was dim because the only light comes from a small vent window high on the wall. And today, even that light looked different, weaker, tinted, like it was filtering through fog. The water jugs were still stacked in the corner, untouched. But the first thing that made my chest tighten wasn't the water. It was the radio equipment I keep back there. The old analog stuff I use when the main system glitches. The old receiver with the dials, the coiled cables, the backup mic. They were all humming, not loudly, not the way a working machine hums. This was a low, almost silent vibration that I could feel more in my bones than in my ears. I stood still, waiting to see if maybe it was the generator causing some kind of feedback, but the generator was 2 rooms away, and it wasn't running at that moment. I reached out and touched the metal casing of the old receiver. It felt warm. Too warm. Like someone had just been using it. But I hadn't turned it on in days. And the power in that room is dead unless I reroute it manually, which I never did. I pulled my hand back and looked around the room like I expected someone to step out from behind the shelves. No one did. It was just me, breathing too fast, ears ringing from the silence. I knelt down and placed my ear close to the old receiver. That's when I heard it. A faint clicking. Soft, spaced out, irregular, like tapping, but tapping from the inside of the machine. I froze. The sound didn't match static. It didn't match old components heating up. It almost sounded like something trying to move inside the metal, testing the walls the way a trapped insect might. I know how insane that sounds, and I stood there trying to force my brain to accept any other explanation, anything else. But the clicking continued, slow, curious, patient. I backed away from the equipment until my shoulders hit the shelves behind me. My fingers brushed against something soft, a blanket I use at night, and it made me flinch. My nerves were so tight I could barely breathe. The clicking stopped as soon as I moved, like whatever caused it noticed me noticing it. Or maybe that's just my fear twisting things. I don't know anymore. I waited a long moment in the doorway, staring at the receiver, half expecting it to start vibrating again. It didn't. The room returned to that heavy stillness, but the metallic smell lingered. I grabbed the water I came for and left the room without checking the fuel. I couldn't stay in there any longer. Something felt wrong, not dangerous in the loud, obvious way. Wrong in the slow, creeping way that makes you feel watched, even when you're alone. I shut the door and leaned against it until the shaking in my hands stopped. It took longer than I want to admit. When I came back into the studio, the air felt normal again, or as normal as it can feel these days. But I kept thinking about the old man from yesterday, the one who talked about signals traveling, signals leaking, signals moving in ways we never understood. What if whatever caused this collapse isn't just killing machines, but twisting them, using them, living inside them somehow? I don't want to believe that. I don't want to say it out loud, because once something is spoken, it becomes real in a way your mind can't hide from. But something about that clicking, it didn't feel mechanical. It felt intentional. I keep checking the corners of the room now, glancing at the vents, listening for noises I can't explain. This building has shifted from a place where I worked to a place I'm trapped in. But not because the doors are locked. It's because I don't know what's out there anymore. And I don't know what's in here either. I looked out the front window again a little while ago. The street was empty, the way it usually is now. The glow from last night didn't return, but the sky looked different. Lower, thicker, like layers of dust and clouds had merged into one heavy blanket. I tried to track the time by the light alone, but the brightness changes without pattern now. Sometimes it gets lighter for a few minutes, then drops into darkness even though it should be morning. It's like the sun is struggling to break through whatever is covering the sky, or maybe something between us and the sun is shifting. I don't want to drift too deep into things I can't prove. Not yet. But the world has lost its rules, and when rules vanish, everything starts to feel possible. Even the impossible. I need to talk about something else that happened earlier. On my way back from the front entrance, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Not mine, not echo, real footsteps. Slow ones, soft ones. They stopped when I stopped. For a moment, I thought it might be someone from the street who found their way in, maybe looking for shelter or supplies. I called out quietly, asking if someone was there. Nobody answered. I walked toward the sound, each step making my heart beat harder. The hallway felt colder than before. I reached the bathroom door, the one that always sticks a bit when you pull it open. It was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and found nothing. Just the same cracked tiles, the same old mirror, the same broken soap dispenser. But the air was damp, like someone had been inside breathing heavily. There were drops of water on the sink. I touched them. Cold. Fresh. I stood there staring at myself in the mirror, my face pale, my eyes bloodshot. I looked older than I should. Tired in a way sleep can't fix. I didn't hear the footsteps again after that, but I kept glancing over my shoulder on the way back to the studio. Maybe someone is in this building with me. Maybe they left before I checked. Or maybe my mind is cracking under the weight of everything. But the water on the sink wasn't mine. I haven't used that room in days. This place is changing. Or I am. Or both. I want to talk about the people surviving nearby, because thinking about them gives me something stable, something human to hold on to. Yesterday, I watched a group of neighbors form a small circle in the parking lot across the street. They shared food, just small things, canned beans, crackers, a half bag of rice someone must have taken from a looted store. They ate quietly, watching the sky, listening for noises none of us can explain. One woman was crying softly, and another held her hand the entire time, whispering something I couldn't hear. Even with everything falling apart, kindness still exists. It's quieter now, thinner, harder to maintain, but it's there. People cling to each other when the world stops making sense. Even fear can't erase that instinct. Earlier today, I saw a young man pushing an old shopping cart filled with bottles he must have collected from abandoned houses. He had tied blankets around the cart to muffle the sound of the wheels so he wouldn't attract attention. Smart kid. Fear teaches people to adapt faster than safety ever did. He looked up at the station window for a moment, and I raised my hand. He raised his back. No words, just a shared moment between two people trying to stay alive long enough to see something change. It hit me then that maybe survival isn't just about food and water and hiding. Maybe it's about staying human, even when everything pushes you to stop being one. Maybe that's why I keep broadcasting. Not because I expect anyone out there to save us, but because voices matter, stories matter, connection matters. If we lose that, then whatever caused all this has already won. But I still need to tell you about the thing that scares me most right now. Something I found after leaving the bathroom. It's connected to the station. It's connected to the signals. And it makes me think this collapse isn't just around us. It might be inside the very air we're breathing. After I left the bathroom, I walked back toward the studio, forcing myself to breathe slow so I wouldn't lose control. My nerves were already stretched tight from the footsteps and the metallic smell in the back room. But what I found next is what truly made everything in me twist. I heard a faint noise from inside the studio before I reached the door. Not the hum of the equipment, not the groan of the generator trying to hold itself together. It was a soft whispering sound, like wind brushing through a crack, even though there are no open windows here and no drafts strong enough to make that kind of noise. I stood still in the hallway, listening. The whispering grew just a little louder, not enough to be clear, but enough that I felt it in the back of my neck. The kind of feeling you get when someone stands too close behind you. I pushed the door open slowly. Everything looked normal at first. The mic was where I left it. The papers with my notes were still scattered across the desk. The screen on the transmitter blinked its weak, flickering light. But the whispering didn't stop. It didn't move through the room like sound should. It stayed in one place, near the far corner behind the old storage cabinet. The cabinet has been there longer than I've worked here, filled with cables, dust, and equipment nobody uses anymore. I walked closer, step by step, my throat tightening because something in that corner felt wrong. When I reached the cabinet, the whispering stopped instantly. Not faded, not drifted, stopped, like someone cut a wire inside the air. I stood there, staring at the cabinet door, waiting for something to move. Nothing did. My hand lifted on its own, shaking as I reached for the handle. I almost didn't open it. Every instinct told me not to, but curiosity and fear together create a strange pull that's impossible to ignore. I opened it slowly, half expecting something to fall out or some smell to rush forward, but it was just darkness inside, the dim outline of coils of cables and dusty boxes. And then I saw it. Not a shape, not a creature, something worse, because it wasn't supposed to be possible. One of the old cables, a thick, black one with copper pins at the end, was moving. Tiny, subtle movements, like it was shifting under its own weight. Not falling, not settling, moving, like something alive stirring inside the rubber. I stared until my eyes burned, thinking maybe the floor was shaking or I was imagining it. But then the copper end twitched again, bending minutely toward the edge of the shelf. Like it was listening, like it was reacting to my presence. The breath I let out was shaky, too loud in the silence. The cable stilled the second I exhaled. Completely motionless, like it never moved at all. I closed the cabinet door without touching anything inside. My fingers were cold and stiff, and I backed away until I reached the desk. I sat down because my legs felt weak, like they didn't want to hold me anymore. I stared at the cabinet from across the room, half expecting it to rattle or open on its own. It didn't. But even now as I talk, I can still feel something in that corner. Something watching. Something waiting. Maybe it's just the fear making shadows heavier. Maybe not. After sitting there for a long time, trying to calm my breathing, I remembered something the old man said yesterday. Signals travel. They leak. They jump. What if he wasn't speaking metaphorically? What if whatever escaped that lab didn't just kill machines, didn't just shut down power grids? What if it spread through the lines, through the wires, through the circuits, through the very veins of the world we built? What if the collapse didn't kill the machines? What if the collapse changed them? I'm trying to stay rational, but everything is pointing toward something we were never ready to understand. The machines didn't just die, they changed. And whatever changed them might not be limited to machines alone. When something invisible moves through a world built on wires and signals, who knows what rules get rewritten? Maybe the dead devices aren't dead. Maybe they're changing the way the machines behave. Or maybe something inside those signals is alive in some way we never imagined. I keep glancing at the cabinet while I'm talking now. I don't want to, but I can't help it. I feel like if I look away too long, something will happen. Something will move again. The whispering hasn't returned, but I swear the air in that corner is colder than the rest of the room. Not a breeze, just coldness that sits still, heavy, unmoving. The kind of cold that feels unnatural. I need to steady myself before I talk about the last thing. The thing I found on the transmitter screen. The message that wasn't supposed to appear. But before that, I want to talk about the quiet outside, because that quiet is becoming its own kind of warning. Earlier today, the silence grew so thick it almost hurt. I stepped outside the station door for a moment, just to breathe fresh air, if you can call this air fresh anymore. The street was completely empty. No wind, no animals, no distant shouts, no sound at all. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I could hear the faint crackle of static from the radio tower above the building, even though it shouldn't have made any sound without active transmission. The silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt loaded, like the world was holding its breath. I walked a little way down the street, not far, just enough to see the intersection. The buildings around me looked hollow, stripped of life, their windows reflecting nothing because the sky barely gives off any light now. I saw papers blowing across the road a few days ago. I don't anymore. Even the wind seems afraid to move. The air feels heavier, like it's thickened. Like something is sitting above the city, pressing down slowly. I thought I saw something on a rooftop in the distance. A silhouette, maybe. A shape that didn't match the lines of the building. It stood there too still, too straight, watching the street below. I blinked, and it was gone. Maybe my eyes are failing. Maybe it was just debris. But I've started to realize something. The things that frighten me most aren't the things I see. They're the things I think I see. The things that might be real, but vanish when I look too hard. This city has become a mirror for fear. Whatever is happening here twists the edges of reality. Just a little. Just enough to make you question your senses. When I came back inside, the message was waiting. The transmitter screen shouldn't be able to receive anything. Not anymore. The main network is gone. The satellites are probably dark. The towers in this region shut down days ago. So when I saw the blinking symbol, a small dot pulsing faintly on the display, I froze. It blinked slowly, steady as a heartbeat. I didn't touch anything. I didn't press any buttons. And then the message appeared. It wasn't a voice, or a recording, or a signal I recognized. It was a short line of text in faint gray letters across the screen. It faded in slowly, like the machine was struggling to form the symbols. Do not follow the light. That was it. No sender, no timestamp, no frequency marker. Just those words. They stayed on the screen for maybe a minute, then faded out again, leaving the display blank except for the weak glow of the power indicator. I stared at the screen long after the message vanished, trying to control the shaking in my hands. I don't know who sent it. I don't know if it was a warning from someone alive out there, or if it was something else. Something inside the system itself trying to communicate in the only way it could. But the message hit me harder than anything else I've seen or heard. Because last night, I did follow the light with my eyes, the glow moving across the skyline, the steady hum that came with it. If I had stepped outside at that moment, if I had walked toward it, who knows what would have happened? I don't know what the light is. I don't know if it's connected to the moving figure, or the humming in the wires, or whatever caused the machines in the back room to shift. But someone, or something, doesn't want us going near it. And that means the light isn't safe. It's a lure in a dying world. That message didn't save me, not really. But it made me realize something important. Even in the collapse, even with everything twisted and broken, something is still trying to warn us. Something out there still sees us, still cares enough to send a message, even if it's tiny and faint and nearly lost in the static. That means there might still be hope. Not much, but enough to keep going. There's more. There's something happening near the river. A sound I've been hearing in the distance. A pattern. A pulse. And I think it's getting closer. The sound started faint 2 nights ago. Just a thin pulse that blended with the distant wind at first. Back then, I thought it was my imagination filling in the empty spaces. Because when the world goes quiet, your mind starts making its own noise. But last night the pulse grew stronger, clear enough that it reached the station even through the thick walls. It was deep, steady, spaced far apart, like a slow heartbeat echoing through metal. I tried to track the rhythm, but it didn't have one. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't natural. It came in irregular waves, sometimes soft, sometimes heavier, like something shifting beneath the surface of the river and releasing bursts of sound that rolled across the city. Each pulse felt like pressure sliding through my bones, leaving a faint ache behind. I stepped outside earlier to listen, even though every instinct screamed at me not to. I can't explain why I did. Curiosity, maybe. Or fear disguised as curiosity. The sky was the same dull gray, thick enough that even the morning light couldn't break through. The buildings looked melted at the edges, warped by shadows that didn't match their shapes. When I reached the street, I heard the pulse clearly. A low thump that rolled across the empty blocks, bouncing between the hollow windows and the cracked pavement. It didn't sound like a machine failing or water moving. It sounded alive. A slow, distant knock, like something large pushing against the riverbed or calling out in a language made of vibration. I walked toward the intersection where the river becomes visible between the buildings. I didn't go all the way to the riverbank. I'm not reckless. But I went far enough to see the surface of the water through the gaps. And the water wasn't still. It moved in perfect circles, slow spirals that didn't match the direction of the wind. The spirals tightened and loosened with each pulse, as if the water was responding to it. I stood there for longer than I should have, staring, waiting for something to break the surface. My legs felt rooted to the ground. The air tasted like metal again. That same sharp taste from the back room, but colder out here, mixed with the smell of wet concrete. When the next pulse came, it was strong enough that the streetlight pole next to me shivered. That was the moment I stepped back. Something about that vibration felt wrong. Too heavy, too focused. It felt like it was growing. I didn't wait to hear another one. I turned and walked back quickly, not running, but close to it. I kept my eyes on the windows, half expecting to see that figure from last night watching me again. I didn't see anyone, but the feeling of being watched stayed with me the whole way back. When I got inside the station, the pulse followed. Not loudly, but enough that the shelves rattled slightly. That's when I realized it wasn't the river making the sound. The river was reacting to it, the same way the air reacts when thunder is far away. The source of the pulse must be deeper, below the water or beyond it, radiating upward and outward, and whatever is causing it is getting stronger. I've been trying to think rationally about what it could be. A shifting fault line? Unlikely. The pattern is too deliberate. Machinery coming online underground? Impossible. Nothing works anymore, and even if something were hidden beneath the river, it wouldn't be active now when everything else is dead. Some kind of collapse? A cave-in? No. This sound has intention behind it. Something pushing, something waking, something testing the edges of the world it's trapped under. I don't want to say this out loud, not even now, but here I am thinking it over and over again. Maybe whatever shut our world down isn't just in the air or the signals or the wires. Maybe it's also in the ground. Maybe we triggered something that has roots deeper than any lab. Maybe the collapse wasn't an accident. Maybe it was a response, a reaction to the way we flooded the earth with signals, power, waves, energy. Maybe something under the river wasn't meant to feel that, and now it does. I keep replaying the message from the transmitter screen. Do not follow the light. What if the light isn't the real danger? What if the light is just the thing they want us to fear, so we stay away from where the real threat is forming? But that makes no sense. Or maybe it makes too much sense. Nothing fits anymore, and every explanation creates more questions. The pulse near the river reminds me of something I heard years ago, long before any of this. A researcher was on air once, talking about underground resonance. He said the earth has frequencies that run through it like veins, deep channels of vibration that carry energy across continents. We never paid attention to them because they were too slow and too quiet for us to care. But he said, if something ever woke up down there, something that could tap into those frequencies, the world would feel it before anyone could explain it. I laughed back then. It sounded like science fiction. Now I wonder whether he knew something he wasn't allowed to say outright. There's another thing, a smaller detail, but it won't leave my mind. As I turned to come back to the station earlier, I saw shapes moving in the windows of an office building across the street. Not clear shapes, not people, just faint shadows drifting across the glass like fog swirling behind curtains. They weren't walking. They weren't standing. They were moving in strange patterns, sliding from one side of the room to the other. I stopped walking for a second, trying to focus, to see if it was just light distortion. Then the pulse rolled through the street again, and the shapes froze, completely still, like something held them in place. When the echo faded, the shapes dissolved into darkness. I didn't stay to watch longer. All these pieces, the moving cables, the whispering air, the message on the transmitter, the figure in the street, the humming in the wires, the pulse near the river. They're forming a picture I don't want to look at. A picture that suggests we're not alone in this collapse. Not in the way people mean when they comfort each other. Something else is here with us. Something invisible. Shifting within the dead systems. Breathing through the broken machines. Pressing through the riverbed. testing the city like it's trying to understand what survived. Maybe it sees us the same way we'd observe insects in a jar, moving, watching, curious. I don't know how long we'll have before it shows itself fully, whatever it is. But the signs are getting closer, louder, more deliberate. I want to talk about something more human for a moment, because the weight of this is too much to carry without grounding myself somehow. Earlier today, I saw two people walking together, a man and a teenage girl, maybe his daughter. They were carrying bags filled with blankets and jars. The man kept adjusting the strap on his backpack, shifting it to balance the weight. The girl held onto his coat with one hand like she was afraid he'd disappear if she let go. They didn't talk. They just walked slowly, carefully, staying close to the shadows. But they stayed together. And somehow that sight, two people refusing to split apart, gave me a strength I didn't know I still had. Hope doesn't look like it used to. It's not bright or loud or triumphant. It's small now, quiet, fragile. A hand held, a shared blanket, a wave through a window. Hope is survival in pieces, and those pieces matter more now than they ever did before. There's one more thing I need to tell you about. It concerns the rooftop. Something happened up there today. Something that made me think the pulse from the river isn't the only thing moving closer. I didn't plan on going up to the rooftop today. The wind has been too sharp, and the stairwell smells like dust and rust, mixed with the stale air that collects in places people stopped visiting. But after hearing the pulse roll through the street again, after seeing those strange spirals in the river water and the faint shadows drifting behind windows, something pushed me to check the tower above the station. Maybe I just wanted to see if it was still standing, if the structure holding my voice up in the air hadn't cracked under the strain of whatever is pressing down on this city. Or maybe I was looking for answers I didn't even know how to ask for. Either way, I found myself climbing the stairwell, one shaky step at a time, my fingers brushing against the cold rail to steady myself. The stairwell was darker than usual. Even with the small square window on each landing, the light barely reached inside. Dust floated in slow motion, suspended in the dimness like flakes of ash drifting through old sunlight. I could hear my own breathing echo off the concrete walls. Halfway up, I stopped because I thought I heard something above me. A faint shuffle, not loud, but distinct enough to make me freeze. For a moment, I debated turning back, but something told me that whatever was up there wasn't moving away. It was waiting. When I reached the rooftop door, I pressed my ear against it. Nothing. No wind, no movement. Just the deep quiet of a world holding itself together by frayed threads. I pushed the door open slowly, letting the cold air spill into the stairwell. It hit me hard, colder than I expected, like stepping out into early winter, even though it wasn't supposed to be that cold today. The sky above was the same sick gray it's been for days, thick and heavy enough that the horizon blurred into one dark smear. The rooftop felt deserted, but not empty. The kind of place that looks unoccupied, but feels watched. The radio tower stands near the center, rising higher than any building on this block. I could hear it humming faintly, the same way dying machines hum when they're holding on to whatever last current they can find. That hum wasn't there 2 days ago. It shouldn't be there now. I walked across the gravel surface, stepping over broken pieces of old shingles and rusted bolts that had shaken loose long before the collapse. Every sound felt too loud under the muted sky. I got within maybe 10 feet of the tower when I saw something at its base. At first, I thought it was a pile of debris blown there by the strange winds we've been getting. But then I noticed the pattern. Not random, not scattered. Something had arranged the pieces. Stones, bits of plastic, frayed insulation, small shards of metal. They were laid out in a spiral. Not perfect, but deliberate. A winding pattern circling outward from the base of the tower. I knelt down slowly, careful not to disturb anything. The spiral was wide enough that someone, or something, must have taken time to place each piece. The stones were arranged by size, smallest in the center, larger ones forming the outer edges. The plastic and metal pieces were placed between them, almost like someone wanted the spiral to conduct or channel something. The sight made my skin prickle. This wasn't a random act of a desperate survivor. It felt like a signal, or a mark, or maybe a connection to whatever is causing the pulses under the river. I touched one of the stones near the edge. It was warm, not sun-warmed. The sky hasn't given us real sun in days. This warmth felt internal, like the stone had been absorbing heat from something beneath or inside it. I pulled my hand back quickly, because for a second, it felt like the warmth was pushing into my skin, rather than sitting on the surface. I don't know how to explain that. Heat doesn't move like that. It doesn't reach toward you. But this did. Then I noticed something else. Something small, but impossible to ignore. The gravel around the spiral wasn't just shifted from foot traffic. It was smoothed. Like something heavy had been dragged in a circular path around the tower. A single trail, consistent, wide enough to be the width of a body. The gravel in that path was pressed flat, like weight had moved over it again and again. But there were no footprints, no shoe marks, no drag marks from clothing. Just a smooth, shallow groove running in a loop around the spiral. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as I straightened up, looking around the rooftop. Nothing moved. No people. No animals. No wind strong enough to shape that spiral or that groove. I backed up from the tower, keeping my eyes on the spiral because I didn't want to turn my back on it. There's something deeply unsettling about seeing order in a place that should only have chaos. Patterns mean intention. Intentions mean something is thinking. As I reached the rooftop door again, I caught a glimpse of something in my peripheral vision. A flicker, a shift, a shadow stretching across the rooftop, even though nothing was there to cast it. I turned my head quickly, but the shadow vanished as fast as it appeared. The sky groaned then, low and heavy, almost like the air itself was straining. The pulse from the river rolled through the city again, faint but present, traveling upward through the rooftop surface, into my feet. The spiral of stones vibrated just slightly, enough that I saw one of the smaller pieces quiver on its edge. I didn't stay another second. I bolted down the stairwell, each step echoing too loudly. When I reached the studio, I shut the door behind me and leaned back against it, breathing hard, trying to steady myself. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and for a moment I felt dizzy, like the pulse had reached inside my skull and was rattling something loose. I sat down, gripping the edge of the desk until the room stopped tilting. I've been thinking about that spiral ever since. It wasn't a random arrangement. It wasn't something a human would make for comfort or ritual. It felt like a map, or a signal, or a connection point for something bigger. Maybe something underneath the city is reaching upward, trying to sync with machines that aren't even fully alive anymore. Maybe the collapse didn't just take our power. Maybe it created openings for things we never should have touched. The more I think about it, the more I realize something terrifying. The pulse under the river, the hum in the wires, The moving cables, the whispering air, the glowing light, the figure in the street. None of these things are separate. They're connected. They're different pieces of one pattern forming around us. And that spiral on the rooftop is part of that pattern. I don't want to say this, but I think whatever is happening isn't random. It's organized. It's spreading. And we're caught inside something we don't understand. Something that doesn't care if we survive or not. Earlier today, I tried adjusting the radio tuner to scan the dead frequencies. Most of them are silent, broken, empty. But a few seconds ago, just before I started talking again, I heard something on one of the lower frequencies. A faint sound, not static, not a voice, a slow, rhythmic swell. Not a pulse like the river, but similar. Lighter, closer, almost like breathing. Something is using the signals. Something is breathing through them. I don't know what this means yet, but I need to tell you about the building next door. Something happened there about an hour ago. Something I've never heard in my life before today. I've been staring at the wall for the last few minutes, trying to decide how to say this without it sounding like my mind finally snapped. Maybe it has. Maybe that doesn't even matter anymore, as long as I'm still telling the truth as I see it. The building next door has always been just that to me. Next door. An office space, a place with printers and cubicles and people who'd walk past the station with coffee in hand, talking into phones about meetings and deadlines. I never knew what company rented most of the floors, and I never cared. It was part of the background, like a piece of stage set. Solid, boring, dependable. Just there. Today, it became something else. It started with a sound I didn't recognize. Not the river pulse, not the low hum in the tower, not the odd whispering from the wires. This sound cut through the usual dead air like a thin blade. It was high at first, just at the edge of hearing, the kind of noise you feel more in your teeth than in your ears. I thought it was feedback from the equipment, so I took off my headphones and the sound got clearer instead of fading. That's when I realized it was coming from outside. I went to the front window slowly, pressing my fingers against the cold glass. The street was empty again. That part has stopped surprising me. No cars moving, no people walking, no flicker of life behind the shop windows. But the sound was louder near the window, like the glass itself was carrying it. A thin, rising tone, wavering just a little, then dropping lower in short steps, like someone running fingers down a piano string. It was coming from the building to the right of the station. I narrowed my eyes, trying to see better through the gray light. The office building's windows were mostly dark, a few cracked, some with the blinds half twisted. Then, somewhere on the third floor, a faint glow flickered to life. Not bright, just a pale, sickly light that painted a rectangle against the gray. The sound matched the glow. As the light grew stronger, the tone rose with it, thin and sharp, like metal being bent slowly. When the light dimmed, the sound dropped. It wasn't perfect, but there was a connection. The building was making that noise. My first thought was that someone had found a working generator. Maybe they'd managed to power a single room. Maybe they were sending a signal. Maybe they'd found a way to push back against the collapse. I wanted that to be true so badly that my chest hurt. I even imagined for a second that they might hang a sign in the window or flash some kind of pattern. But the longer I watched, the more wrong it felt. This wasn't a human rhythm. It was too clinical, too isolated. It didn't seem to care whether anyone was watching or not. The light didn't flicker like a bulb with bad wiring. It pulsed, soft, hard, soft, then a long stretch of nothing, then a quick stutter of brightness. The sound followed each change, climbing and dropping as if tethered to the glow by an invisible rope. I tried to count the pattern, to see if it matched anything familiar, Morse, code, something. It didn't. Even if there was a meaning behind it, it was buried in a logic that didn't match any language I know. I stood there for a long time, watching, listening. The world outside the glass felt held in place by that noise, like the air itself was tense, waiting for something to happen. After a while, I noticed movement in another window on a lower floor. At first, I thought it was a reflection. Then I saw it again, a shadow drifting past the blinds, slow and smooth, not jerky like someone pacing. It slid. It paused in the center of the window and stayed there. The outline faint, but unmistakable. A human shape. Shoulders. Head. Arms at its sides. I wanted to call out, to knock on the window, to wave, to do something that said, "I see you. I'm here. You're not alone." But something in me locked up. Any warmth that sight could have given me died the second I realized it wasn't reacting to the light or the sound at all. It stood there, perfectly still, while the glow above pulsed and faded, while the thin tone kept sliding up and down the scale like some twisted test tone. No flinch, no shift, no sign that whatever that silhouette was had any interest in the world around it. The light on the third floor suddenly went out. The sound cut off mid-rise, like someone muted it mid-syllable. For several seconds, there was nothing. No glow, no tone, no motion. Then the shadow in the lower window changed. It didn't move in a way I know. It stretched, just a little. The head tilted too far to one side, like the neck had no bones. The arms lengthened down, just a bit past where they should naturally end. It was a small distortion, but enough that every hair on my arms stood up. It was like the shape was being pulled by something we couldn't see, or like it was trying to adjust itself to a new set of rules. I stepped away from the window without meaning to, my heel catching on the edge of the rug. I grabbed the wall to steady myself, heart slamming against my ribs. When I looked back, the silhouette was gone. No slow exit, no clear motion, just gone. The window was empty again, blinds still half twisted, glass reflecting nothing but gray. I waited, counting under my breath. 5 seconds, 10, 20, a minute. No sound returned, no light, no shadow. The building went back to being another dead block in a dead city. But it isn't, not anymore. I saw it, I heard it. Something in there is still working, but it's not working for us. I came back to the mic because I needed to get this out of my head before it curls deeper inside and rots there. I needed someone out there to know that the buildings around you might not be as empty as they look. If you're listening from a city like mine, if you have towers or office blocks near you, be careful where you look. Be careful how long you watch. And if you hear a tone that doesn't belong to anything you can see, don't go toward it. Don't try to be the hero who checks just in case. That urge, the one that tells you to go closer to understand, that's how we lived before all this. That curiosity built every tower, every wire, every signal that now hangs above us like spider webs. But right now, curiosity will get you killed, or worse, changed into something we don't have a word for yet. I keep thinking about the message on the transmitter. Do not follow the light. I wonder if this is part of what they meant. Not just the glow on the horizon, but any light that doesn't behave the way light should, any glow that pulses to its own rhythm, any brightness that asks your attention like a hand on your shoulder. We're used to following light, screens, signs, phones, alerts. That habit is still in us, and whatever is out there knows it. I can feel myself wearing down. My voice feels thinner when I talk now. My thoughts move slower, like they're wading through cold water. I'm trying hard not to let that show, because I don't want to spread more fear than I have to, but I also don't want to lie. So I'll say this as plainly as I can. I'm scared. I'm tired. And there are moments now when I feel something pressing at the edges of my mind. Not like a thought, more like a pressure, a weight. It's worse when the pulses roll through the city. It's worse when the hum in the wires grows stronger. I don't know if this is just stress and lack of sleep, or if whatever is moving through the signals is brushing against us, the same way it brushes against the machines. Maybe we're not immune. Maybe our brains are just another system it can test. If that's true, then we need to protect what's left of our minds as much as we protect our food and water. So here's something practical, because I promised myself I'd still offer something useful when I could. If you have a radio that still works, don't scan constantly. Pick one or two frequencies that feel clean enough, that don't carry the strange hum or the thin tones, and stick to them. Don't stare at dark screens hoping they'll turn on. Cover them if you have to. Limit how much of your day you spend listening for new signals. Yes, we want information. We want connection. But too much listening now feels like opening a door we don't understand. We don't know what's waiting on the other side. Try to keep a routine, even if it feels pointless. Wake up at the same time if you can. Share food at regular intervals. Check on the people around you. Talk to them out loud, even if you don't have anything important to say. Human voices anchor us. They remind our brains what our world used to be built around. Not screens, not signals, not towers. People. My routine has shrunk to a few simple things. Check the generator, check the water, talk into this mic, walk the halls so the silence doesn't swallow the whole building, look outside just long enough to know the street hasn't changed into something unrecognizable. Sometimes, if I'm honest, I think about going outside and walking until I reach the river, or the bridge, or the edge of the city. There's a part of me that wants to see how far this collapse goes. Is it just here? Is it everywhere? Are there places where lights are still on and people are still laughing, unaware of what's happening to us? But then I remember the dead towers, the silent sky, the vanished broadcasts, the last broken signal from Virginia, the old man talking about leaking waves, the cable that moved like it was breathing, the spiral on the roof, the tone in the building next door. And I know, deep down, this isn't just a local disaster. This is bigger. This is something that reached too far, too fast, and now is spreading through every path we laid down for our own convenience. You know, I keep using the word collapse, but it doesn't feel right anymore. Collapse sounds like something falls and then stops. This doesn't feel like it's stopping. It feels like a transformation. A slow, terrible change crawling over everything we built. I wish I had something hopeful to end this part on, some sense of progress or safety. I don't. What I do have is this. You're still listening. I'm still talking. That means we're both still here. There is stubborn power in that simple fact. As long as there are people breathing and thinking and refusing to give themselves over to whatever this is, then the story isn't over. It hasn't swallowed everything. Not yet. there is more I haven't told you. About yesterday evening, when someone banged on the station door and begged to be let in. About what he said he saw near the highway before I barred the door again. I've been putting it off because repeating his words makes them feel more real, and I'm not sure I'm ready for that. But you need to hear it. If you're near any major road, you need to hear it. It was close to dusk yesterday when I heard the banging on the front door. Not knocking, banging. Desperate, uneven hits that shook the frame and echoed through the station like someone was using their last bit of strength to demand the world stay open for them. I froze mid-sentence. I wasn't even broadcasting at the time. I was talking to myself, trying to stay awake. The sound jolted me straight out of my chair. In this city now, nobody bangs unless something behind them is worse than dying. I walked to the lobby slowly, feeling my heartbeat climb up into my throat. The entrance is blocked with a metal bar I dragged into place days ago, wedged between the door handles. I approached from the side so I wouldn't stand directly in front of the glass. The banging came again, then a hit harsher than the rest, then a voice. Hoarse, cracking, barely more than a breath. Please don't leave me outside. I hesitated. That's the truth. Every muscle in my body told me not to remove that bar. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I didn't trust the world behind him. You start thinking differently after a few days of this. You learn that any open door is an invitation to anything listening, anything moving. But fear has its limits. There was something in his voice that cut through mine. Something human. Something that reminded me of how people used to ask for help before this collapse taught us to whisper. I moved closer and peeked around the edge of the boarded window. A man stood hunched over, hands pressed flat against the door. His hair was plastered to his forehead, face pale, cheeks streaked with dark dirt or maybe dried blood. He looked exhausted, not the kind of exhaustion from running, but the deeper kind, the kind that makes a person look smaller, like their bones have shrunk under the weight of whatever they've seen. He kept glancing over his shoulder as if something might be following him. I slid the bar down slowly, making as little noise as possible. He stumbled inside the second I opened the door a crack, his body hitting the floor like his legs refused to hold him any longer. I shut the door fast and jammed the bar back into place. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He sat against the wall, breathing in sharp, painful bursts, clutching the fabric of his jacket like he was trying to keep something inside from spilling out. I asked him what happened. Not gently. I didn't have the energy for gentle anymore. He didn't answer at first. He kept looking at the door, staring at the cracks around the frame like he expected a hand to slip through. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded raw, scraped thin. "It's at the highway," he whispered. My stomach twisted. There are a lot of things it could mean now. But somehow I knew exactly what he meant without asking. I asked anyway, because I needed to hear him say it in his own words. "What's at the highway?" He swallowed hard, squeezing his eyes shut like the memory burned behind them. "Not just one thing," he said. "A whole line of them. Moving. Blocking the road." He told me he had been traveling from the outskirts, trying to reach a group that was rumored to be gathering near the old transit hub. He'd been following the highway walkway, keeping close to the guardrail because the road itself was littered with dead cars. He said the closer he got to the main interchange, the stranger the air felt. Heavy, cold, like walking into a freezer that stretched across the entire overpass. His breath started fogging, even though the temperature was mild everywhere else he'd passed. Then he saw shapes in the distance. Not people, not cars, Not debris. Silhouettes. Tall, thin silhouettes standing in a row across all 4 lanes facing the same direction. Not moving, not reacting, just standing. The way he described them made my skin crawl. Too tall, too straight. Heads tilted slightly forward, as if listening to something deep underground. Arms at their sides. No faces he could make out. Just darkness shaped into the outline of bodies. He stopped moving instantly and crouched behind a collapsed sign. He watched them for several minutes. They didn't shift, didn't breathe, didn't turn. They were statues in the fog. Then the pulse came, the same pulse I've been hearing from the river. But he said this one was stronger, close enough to shake the ground under his hands. When the pulse hit, the silhouettes moved, all at once. He said they straightened, slowly lifted their heads. Their arms bent just slightly, like something inside them was waking up and stretching. Then their heads turned toward the same spot. Not the direction he came from, not the city, but toward the west. Every one of them snapped their gaze in that direction at the same moment. He said he didn't wait to find out what happened next. He slid down the embankment, crawled through a drainage ditch, bruised his ribs on the concrete, tore his jacket on rusted metal, ran through an alley full of smashed windows, and didn't stop running until he saw the station tower. He said the glow brushed over the highway while he was running. He didn't look back. While he talked, he kept asking me to turn off the lights. The lights were barely hanging on, flickering from the weak backup power. But he whispered, "Turn them off. Turn them off. They look for light." I didn't know what he meant. I still don't. But when someone speaks with that kind of terror leaking through every syllable, you learn to listen. When he finished talking, he slumped sideways, shaking. Not from cold, from fear, pure fear. I gave him water from the stash and a blanket, and he curled up in the far corner of the hallway, facing the wall. He begged me not to broadcast what he told me until morning. But morning doesn't mean anything now, and I can't keep things like this quiet. Someone out there might be near a highway. Someone might be walking toward danger without knowing it. If the silhouettes he saw are real, and I believe they are, then the highways aren't safe anymore. They're corridors for whatever this force is, whatever pattern is forming across the city. I keep thinking about the way he described them turning their heads together. Not in confusion, not in surprise, in unison, like soldiers responding to a silent command, like the pulse itself was telling them where to look. And that makes me wonder something terrible. If the pulse can move them, what happens when the pulse grows stronger? The man is asleep now, or pretending to be. Every once in a while he twitches, like someone brushing a cold hand across his back. I want to check on him, but I'm afraid to wake him. He looks like he hasn't slept in days. Maybe he hasn't. The collapse doesn't take our sleep so much as it steals the safety needed to sleep. Once that's gone, rest becomes a gamble no one wants to take. There's more, he said between his breaths, something he almost whispered to himself rather than to me. He said the air near the highway felt wrong, thick. He said it buzzed at the edges of his teeth. He said the fog came in waves and carried a faint glow inside it. He said he heard a voice, not a real voice, something humming inside his skull, right before he began running. I need to tell you what he said that voice told him, because if he's right, then whatever is waking up under this city isn't just moving. Before the man drifted into sleep, or the kind of half-sleep people fall into when their minds are running from something their bodies can't outrun, he whispered something that still has its claws in me. He didn't mean to say it out loud. It slipped out the way confessions do when someone is too tired to hold the truth inside anymore. He said he heard a voice at the highway. Not with his ears. He made that part very clear. He said the world around him was completely silent. No wind, no birds, no cars, no echo, nothing. But the moment the silhouettes lifted their heads, something pressed into his skull. A pressure first, then a tone, then something like words forming out of the vibration, shaping themselves into meaning without sound. He said the voice wasn't a voice. It was a feeling shaped like a thought, cold and steady. It didn't sound angry or violent or confused. It sounded patient, like something that had been waiting a very long time. He said the message was short, just one line that repeated itself, low and heavy inside his mind. Not yet. Stay still. He didn't stay still. He ran. He said his legs moved before he even made the choice. He said as soon as he turned away, the pressure in his skull spiked, like something inside him cracked. He clutched the side of his head and fell to his knees on the pavement. That's where he saw the silhouettes shift, not walking, not stepping, aligning. Their heads all turned toward where he knelt, even though he was almost invisible in the haze. Something inside him screamed to move, to run, to flee. And he obeyed that instinct, even as his vision blurred. He said the voice didn't follow him. It didn't yell. It didn't chase. It simply vanished, like whatever sent it had already decided he wasn't worth the effort. But the pressure lingered behind his eyes until he reached the station. I keep thinking about those words. Not yet. Stay still. They sound like instructions, like commands or warnings, and none of those possibilities sit well in my chest. I asked him why he thought the voice said, "Not yet." He didn't open his eyes, but he whispered, because they weren't waiting for me. When I asked what he meant, he shook his head in these small, weak motions that looked like a child refusing to talk. Then he said something even worse, in a voice so faint I almost didn't catch it. They're waiting for something bigger. Something bigger. That's the line my mind keeps returning to, circling like a predator stalking the same patch of ground. What could be bigger than a line of tall, unnatural silhouettes standing on a major highway, responding to pulses from deep underground? What could be bigger in a world that already feels like it's cracking apart at every seam? I keep thinking about the spiral on the rooftop, the movement of the cables, the whisper in the studio, the humming tower, the pulsing river, the glow in the distance, the shadow stretching itself beyond human shape in the building next door, the silence across the city, the strange coldness that creeps under door frames, the metal smell in the back room. All these pieces are pointing toward something forming, not just happening, forming, like the collapse isn't a single event, but a slow birth of something we were never supposed to encounter. I've been sitting here trying to breathe normally, but every deep breath feels like it carries dust from a world that's shifting under us. Sometimes I feel the station walls vibrate when the river pulse passes through the ground. Sometimes the lights dim, even when the generator is running at a steady rhythm. Sometimes the transmitter monitor flickers with shapes that don't look like glitches, more like fragments of letters that never complete themselves. I don't know if it's the system breaking down or something trying to get through. Not long after the man fell asleep, I walked to the front door again, not to let anyone in, just to listen. The street was darker than usual, the sky hanging lower, like the clouds were thickening into something more solid. I could barely see the outlines of the buildings. The silence outside felt coated with something, Not fog, not cold, something else, a weight, a presence. And then, faint from somewhere far away but getting closer, I heard a low, dragging sound. Not footsteps, not wheels. Something slower, heavier, something moving across pavement with patience. I couldn't see what it was, but the sound didn't belong to any animal or machine I've ever heard. It stopped abruptly, like it sensed something, and then the silence folded over the street again. I backed away from the door before anything else could fill that quiet. Maybe the man was right. Maybe whatever is happening is waiting for something bigger. Maybe the collapse isn't finished. Maybe the first phase was taking our machines. The second was taking our systems. The third was taking our cities. And maybe the next phase, the one that hasn't started yet, is something none of us can prepare for. I don't want to believe the world is ending. I don't want to say that out loud, but as I sit here in this dying station, speaking into a microphone that hums with a faint vibration I didn't notice 2 days ago, I can't shake the feeling that we're standing on the edge of something that isn't just disaster, something that might be reshaping everything, including us. I need to tell you next about the moment, just an hour ago, when the transmitter turned itself on without power. I keep replaying the last things that man told me before he drifted into that uneasy sleep against the wall. He said the voice told him, "Not yet." And the more I sit with that, the more I think the meaning wasn't meant for him alone. Maybe it wasn't a warning. Maybe it was a countdown, a holding pattern, something waiting for its moment to move from the edges of our world into the middle of it. And after what just happened a few minutes ago, I think that moment is almost here. I was sitting right here at the desk, trying to steady my thoughts, trying to understand what's happening without letting panic pull my mind apart. The generator was running steady, humming with that uneven rhythm it's taken on since everything began changing. I had the mic off, just listening to the thin static on the line, when I felt something strange vibrate through the floor. Not a pulse like the river, not a tremor. Something lighter, but faster. A ripple, like footsteps. Not human ones. Too quick, too many, too soft. I stood up, my legs stiff, and the ripple came again. A smooth wave running from the back of the building, all the way under my feet toward the front entrance. It felt like something moving beneath the floorboards, brushing the underside of the world I'm standing on. I turned off every piece of equipment in reach, not because I thought it would help, but because the sound of my own machines felt too loud in that moment. Then the lights flickered, not just in the studio, through the whole hallway. A stuttering rhythm, like the building was breathing shallowly. I grabbed the flashlight from the desk drawer and walked to the doorframe, listening. The silence that followed was too complete. No generator hum, no wind, no distant echoes. Even the static on the line seemed to hold its breath. I thought, stupidly, about calling out, saying something like, "Who's there?" As if whatever is moving under this city is something that cares about doors or words. I swallowed it back. Talking felt dangerous in that moment. Then I heard it. A soft knocking. Not at the door. On the wall. 3 taps. Slow. Deliberate. I raised the flashlight and stepped into the hallway, heart pounding against my ribs so hard it felt like my bones were rattling. The hallway looked the same as always. Cracked tiles, peeling paint, the weak light above flickering its last bit of strength. But the air felt thicker, like walking into a place that had been waiting for me. I turned slowly, sweeping the beam up and down the walls. That's when I saw it, A handprint. Pressed into the dust on the wall, long fingers. Too long. The shape blurred at the edges like something pressed through instead of onto the surface. It wasn't there before. I know every mark in this building by now. I've memorized them because fear makes you memorize things without meaning to. But the handprint was damp, as if the air itself had shaped it. I took a step back, raising the light higher. The next handprint was further down. Another step, another print, leading toward the back room, toward the equipment that hummed on its own, the cables that shifted, the smell that wasn't natural, the faint whispering behind the cabinet. I didn't follow the prints. I'm not ashamed to say that. Some things aren't meant to be understood. Some things are only meant to be survived. I backed away slowly, returning to the studio, locking the door even though it wouldn't stop anything that could leave prints like those. When I sat back down in this chair, the static on the frequency changed. Not the hiss, not the white noise. It changed tone. It sounded almost human, like a voice buried under layers of broken signal, trying to form a shape it didn't know how to hold. A rising and falling that mimicked breath. And then, this is the part that scares me the most. It said my name. Not clearly, not perfectly, but close enough. Pa. Tur. Ik. A slow drag on the syllables, like someone learning to speak through a throat made of static. I froze. Every part of me wanted to yank the cables out of the wall, smash the console, run. But the voice didn't call again. It simply rested there, humming under the surface, waiting. It knows me now. It knows the building. It knows the layout of the hall. It knows the man sleeping on the floor. And it knows the river pulses are getting closer. The rooftop spiral is warming. The silhouettes on the highway are aligning. I've been trying to ignore a truth that's been growing in the back of my mind since this started. Whatever is coming, whatever is taking shape, isn't just moving through the machines or the air or the ground. It's adapting, learning, forming something from our world's bones. Something that needs structure, connection, communication. Something that wants that last step into the open. That voice saying Patrick wasn't a greeting. It was a test, a check, a moment of recognition. And now I realize something else. I'm not meant to stop this. None of us are. We weren't built to understand it, let alone stop it. But we can slow it. We can make it harder. We can be unpredictable in a world full of patterns it keeps absorbing. We can survive long enough for whatever comes next. Even if next isn't the world we lost, but something new built from what remains. The man in the hallway woke up a few minutes ago. He's sitting with his knees pulled to his chest, staring at the floor like he's listening to something below it. I asked if he was hearing the pulse again. He shook his head and whispered, "It's not the pulse, it's movement. Movement. Under the city, under us." He asked me if I think the world is ending. I didn't know what to tell him. I don't think we're watching an ending. I think we're witnessing a beginning. Not one meant for us, but one we're trapped inside anyway. But beginnings don't always mean destruction. Sometimes they mean change. Hard, painful, terrifying change. Change that forces us to decide what part of ourselves we're willing to protect and what part we're willing to let go. He asked what we're supposed to do now, and this is what I told him. We stay human as long as we can. That's all we can do. Stay human. Choose each other. Share what little we have. Move quietly. Think clearly. Resist the call of lights, voices, signals that feel wrong. Protect the people you still have beside you. Hold on to whatever memories remind you you're alive. It isn't heroism, it's defiance. And defiance is still something this thing doesn't fully understand. I don't know if I'll keep broadcasting after this. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll switch to a different part of the band. Maybe I'll go silent. Maybe I'll walk out into the gray morning with the man beside me and find others trying to survive in their own small circles of warmth. Maybe I'll climb to the rooftop one last time and scatter the spiral myself. Maybe I'll follow the river pulse to see what's rising. Or maybe I'll stay right here, talking into this mic until the static drowns my voice for good. But if this is the last time you hear me, if this is the last breath I send out into this fractured world, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not alone. Not because something else is here, but because we still have each other. The world may be reshaping itself into something unrecognizable, but as long as we cling to the pieces that still make us human, we win something back, even in the dark, even against something we never asked to meet. If the pulse grows stronger, take shelter. If the lights move unnaturally, turn away. If the air whispers, stay quiet. If something calls your name, remember that you still belong to yourself. This is Patrick Dawson on whatever's left of 102.7 FM in a city that hums with things waking up beneath it. Stay warm, stay hidden, stay alive, and don't let go of who you are. Not now, not ever.